Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's special meeting of the Casa Grande City Council. Tonight, I'm going to go through a couple of procedural pieces first, and then we'll get into the body of the meeting. After we do make the decision tonight, hopefully, the swearing in of the new judge will probably be on the January 7th council meeting, just to give everybody information with regards to that. First of all, I'll call the meeting to order, and secondly, let the roll call show that everyone is present.
So noted.
And the first item of business is C1, which is adopting and formalizing the method of selecting the city judge to preside over the next term. So we're going to go over that, and then we're going to proceed or follow that with the interviews of the candidates, all four of which are seated here in the front row. So welcome. We have Yancy Jensock, did I say that right? Yes. And then Diani Juarez and Douglas Lasota, and then I tried this earlier today. Erica Kadiki? Okay, Radke. I'm sorry. Thank you, Erica. And somebody even coached me on it. I still got it wrong. So after the interviews, then we may go into, or we have the option to go into executive session, talk about some of the candidates. No decisions will be made in the executive session. We may also discuss salary levels. And again, no decisions will be made in executive session. We'll come back out of executive session. And then we probably will make an announcement. Is that, we're going to vote, we'll be voting here tonight in this session, Larry, or we're going to do that in the regular meeting? Okay, all right. So then we'll adjourn, and then we'll open the regular meeting. We have a couple little things at the beginning, and we'll probably try and move the vote up in the meeting so it doesn't come at the end of our city council meeting. So the first item on the agenda tonight is the process. And I hope, has everyone had a chance to read through the process? Okay, so the first piece is really recommending the recommendation by the Judicial Selection Committee, which has happened. The second piece then is that we're all going to ask the same questions of each of the candidates. We each have a question, so there'll be 7 questions. You'll get 3 minutes to answer each question. We'll have a timer here as well. The whole interview should take about 30 minutes. So the timer, this is our Vanna. So we have 1 minute. You'll get a minute warning, and then you'll get a big red stop, and at which time I probably will tell you to stop. We want to try and stay on task with it because we want it to conclude in 30 minutes. So we'll have an opening comments of 3 minutes for each of you. You'll get 3 minutes to answer each question. Then there's a 5-minute wrap up, and that should conclude the interview process. Does everybody understand the timing on that? Okay. Once that's done, then we'll make a motion to move into executive session once the interviews are done. And then we can have some discussions, but again, no decisions will be made in executive session. Then we'll come out of executive session. The city clerk then will name each nominee, name in alphabetical order. Then the mayor and council will make nominations, and someone will have to second those nominations. That's correct. So we can nominate and make a second on as many of the candidates as we want. So we can do 2, we can do 1, we can do 4. All right, so we can do, and you can do it multiple times. Yep. And then secondly, then when we do the vote, you only vote on 1. But you don't have to vote for the person you necessarily nominated. Is that clear? Has everybody got that? Okay. And when we vote, depending on if we have 2 or 3 or more, if it's 2, we'll probably do a roll call vote, and then vote for the person you want if we only have 2 who make it through the nomination process. If there's 3 or more, then we'll probably do a hand vote. So the clerk will read each candidate's name, and then you'll raise your hand as to who you're voting for. Yeah, it'd be a majority vote at that point, at both points. Okay. Yes, yeah. So my next part is anybody have any questions for Larry and staff in terms of this process and how we're going to go through it?
No.
Okay.
Mayor McFarland, I move we accept and approve the formalized method of selecting a city judge.
Second. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So the nomination or the formalizing of the method's been approved. The next piece is the interview process. So if I can ask the candidates, unless you have some questions on the process, okay? If I can ask everybody, but I think Mr. Jensock, you're first, so you can stay in the room. Actually, before I get too far along, too, I wanted to thank the Judicial Nominating Committee, too. I didn't do that at the start, but I think those who were part of that are sitting here. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your leadership as well in leading it. So it's let's see. They're listed, but they're not. Okay. Mike Henderson was the chairman. Gilbert Figueroa, thank you, Gilbert. Jim Summers, Judy Jackson, and Roger Vanderpool. So thank you to all 5 members of the committee. All right, just as a reminder, 3 minutes for your introduction, and then you'll have 3 minutes for each answer the questions, and then a 5-minute wrap up. You don't have to take it all, but you're welcome to take it all.
Okay.
So first part on the introductions, if you would please, during your introduction, let us know if your plans are to live within the city of Casa Grande as part of your introduction.
Will do.
So,
all right.
Mr. Jensock, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to start out explaining why I like being a judge. I've been a judge now for the Gila River Indian community for about 3.5 years. It's something that I wanted to do for quite some time before that, and an opportunity came along, so I grabbed it. And what I like so much about being a judge is it really draws together all my experience previously that I had as a lawyer. So I'm bringing in the substantive knowledge that I have of the various areas of law that I work in. So mainly criminal, some civil, family law. The procedural knowledge, how things work in the courtroom, rules of evidence, rules of criminal procedure, just the practical nuts and bolts of how things work in the courtroom, and also just how all the past experience I've had learning to interact with people. So interacting with clients when I was an attorney representing clients, and then when I became a prosecutor, working with victims, working with police officers, working with other agencies. So it really brings together all the things that I had learned over my career as an attorney, and it has kind of confirmed what I hoped when I originally took the position, that it's really something that I want to continue doing with my career, and I really have enjoyed it. The things that I'd like to talk about as far as what makes a good judge, I think okay. I'm going to wrap up real quickly then and say I do live in Casa Grande. I've lived here for about 2 years and a few months. I moved here to be closer to my work, which is in Sacaton. My mother moved here about a year ago to be closer to me. So although I'm new to Casa Grande, it is a place where I'm making my home now, and I want to contribute to the community. And when I saw this position, I thought this would be a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you. So we'll just go in order that's on our questions. Is that all right, you guys? Okay, so I'll go first. What's your definition of the People's Court?
Well, in the context of the city court, courts of limited jurisdiction in Arizona, that's where the vast majority of cases are handled. Of course, the superior courts may be more high profile, but the court that most people see on a day-to-day basis is a city court. And that's also reflected by the fact that a lot of the folks who come in are not represented. So I think it's the face of the community, and in this case it's the face of the city. And I enjoy dealing with people on a pro se basis. I've got a lot of attorneys that appear in front of me, but I also have done a lot of cases, particularly the civil cases where I have pro se litigants, and I enjoy that. I enjoy interacting with them, and I think I could present a good face for the community.
Mr. Jenkins, please describe your experience, education, and training as it relates to operational management, supervising, and provide an example of how it would apply to the Casa Grande Municipal Court.
Okay. Education-wise, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology from University of Colorado in Boulder. I graduated 1988, and then I went to law school at the University of Denver College of Law. Graduated 1992. Started working at various legal aid positions representing low-income people. Didn't do a whole lot of budgeting in those positions. I did eventually become a manager. Initially started supervising a small office in Douglas, Arizona. That was a branch office of the Southern Arizona Legal Aid organization. Did some budgeting, mainly working with previous budgets that had already been prepared and then updating those as appropriate. I then went on to be a managing attorney with the Pascua Yaqui Tribe Legal Services. I was actually second in command there. And again, I didn't recreate the will. I didn't start from scratch. We took previous budgets and updated those as appropriate. And also when I was the interim chief prosecutor for the Pascua Yaqui Tribe, I did some budgeting work. So I've done supervision in those various positions, some budgeting, not a whole lot. I don't really do that in my current position as a judge. I don't really have a whole lot to do with the budget. I do supervise the clerk staff that work for me, but that's the extent of it. But so I have a fair amount of supervisory experience. I have some budgeting experience, and that is it.
Thank you.
Mr. Jensock, give us an example, and you just mentioned some of your involvement, example of a situation in which you managed or led a team and were able to create a high morale, high productive productivity work group, and what were the keys to the success?
I think two positions that I've had. The initial position that I mentioned where I was supervising a branch office in Douglas, that office had not actually had an attorney for a while, and I came in and supervised some support staff and then supervised hiring of a couple of new attorneys and helped train them in. And I think we had a pretty good team. And I actually trained in my replacement because I knew that I was moving to the main office in Tucson pretty far in advance, so I trained my replacement, and I think I did a pretty good job. And then when I was the managing attorney for the Pasquayaki Legal Services, that was a fairly new office, so I came on board a couple months after it had been created. The executive director knew me and hired me, and together we hired support staff, other attorneys, we trained them in. She let me take over a lot of that because I had a pretty extensive background in civil law at that point. As far as the interim chief prosecution position, I have to say I was kind of a placeholder in that. There was only one other attorney in the office, and I was appointed. I was senior to him, so I was appointed to fill the position until they hired a permanent chief. I ended up being there quite a while, but I can't say that I did a whole lot of setting the tone of leadership there. I kind of just kept things as they were and didn't try to change a whole lot of things because they were working fairly well.
Thanks, sir.
Huh?
What skill sets would you bring to enhance the city court operations?
Well, I've got a wide background of legal practice, so I've done all kinds of things. I started out in family law, did a ton of family law when I first started. Probably for the first 14 years of my career, I did 80% family law, and then learned other areas of law, landlord-tenant. I did some government benefits. I did some bankruptcy, and I then got into criminal prosecution with the Pasquayaki tribe. Then I went to Maricopa County and back to the Pasquayaki tribe with criminal prosecution. And now as a judge, I'm doing a wide variety of things. I was hired to do the adult felony prosecutions, but I've done a lot of other things as well. I've covered traffic dockets, I've done family law cases, I've done some complex civil cases. What all that brings is I'm not afraid of learning new things, and I expect that I can come in and hit the ground running. I don't expect to come in and change things. My own experience with managers who come in and want to change things is the majority of the time it's because they just have a personal preference of how things should be done. There's not a lot of rational thought process that goes into it. So I've never done that. When I've come into a new job as a supervisor, I wouldn't do that here. I would take some time and see how things are working, familiarize myself with the court procedures and the local practice, and if things needed to be changed, then I would talk with the staff about how to do that. But I would never just come in and start changing things willy-nilly.
you.
Thank you.
I didn't realize. What should be the relationship between the municipal court and the city council? And how would you deal with any potential conflicts between the three branches of government?
I hope the relationship would always be a cordial one, and that there would be a recognition of the separation of powers. Um, I, th- so I think an independent judiciary is very important. At the same time, I understand that I would be representative of the community, and certain things would be expected of me. I think if there were things that the council and or the mayor wanted me to do, which were along the lines of administrative things, I would do what they asked me to do. If it crosses over into how to decide legal cases, that would certainly not be appropriate. But I don't think that would be a problem. I don't think it would happen. And by the same token, I'm not going to interject myself into politics. I'm very sensitive to that, particularly where I am now. I wouldn't say I'm the low man at the courthouse, but I'm one of nine judges. I'm hired specifically by the chief judge, so I'm not appointed by the city council. I serve at the chief judge's pleasure. So I'm always mindful of how my decisions could affect the court in general and the chief judge. And I've been very lucky. I've never had any of the chief judges tell me how to decide a case or interfere with my cases in any way whatsoever. But I do touch base with her on cases that I think might be controversial. So again, the separation of powers, but we are all part of the government, and we need to get along and be cognizant of how our decisions affect the other branches.
Mr. Gensock, could you describe a situation where you had to support a legal position that conflicted with your personal beliefs, and tell us how you handled that?
Oh, well, it happens a lot, but the one that comes to mind was in the context of a plea agreement, and the plea, it was involving an assault on a police officer, a young lady about 20 years old, had become very intoxicated, and the police were called. She was combative with them. Nothing physical, really. She had actually spit on the officer, but had not assaulted the officer. That's technically an assault, but she hadn't gotten into a physical fight. And the prosecution was taking a very hard line on the plea agreement, which was that she had to plead to the felony. And I was very conflicted. I considered not taking the plea agreement because this was a young lady who had no criminal record. She had graduated high school, she was attending college, and I felt like there was a person with a lot of potential to really succeed in life. And I really was hesitant to saddle her with a felony conviction at such an early stage in her life. So I actually did take it under advisement. And as I said, I considered not accepting it, but the parties all wanted it. And we discussed it on the record and also off the record, so the defendant was aware of my concerns, and she still wanted to take the plea. So I did take the plea. I sentenced her. It was an open sentence, so I had some leeway in the sentence, and I guess I would say, I don't know if I would call it a lenient sentence, but I just gave her probation when the prosecution was requesting some jail time. But that was a very difficult decision.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, can you tell the panel what judicial ethics means to you?
Well, technically, we have the ABA standards. Excuse me, we've got the state standards that apply to state judicial positions. I said ABA because we at the Indian community we use a set of standards that's based on the ABA standards, and it controls things like communications with parties, communications with attorneys, judicial independence. It's a set of rules. It's the judicial equivalent of what lawyers have to abide by. So I've done that in my career as a lawyer, and I follow the procedures that we've adopted for the Gila River Indian Community Court. And they're very similar to what Arizona has as well. So I am familiar with the Arizona judicial ethics, and I would have no problem following those.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jensock. So that concludes our questions. We have left you some time here at the end to wrap up. If you have 5 minutes, if you want to take all 5 minutes, just to wrap up your communication and letting us know a little more about you.
Sure. First of all, are there any questions about any of the materials I submitted? I submitted a cover letter and my resume, of course, and a writing sample. Any questions about any of that you'd like clarified?
Did anyone have any questions?
Good application.
No, it was a good application. Thank you.
Thank you. As I was, I kind of cut myself short on the introduction, but the things that I feel are very important for a judicial officer are, number one, efficiency, just moving cases along. That's a huge part of it. And sometimes it's a grind, but you've got to move cases along and get them decided on a timely basis. So I've done that at the Gila River Indian Community. I have one of the higher caseloads at that courthouse, and I'm consistently doing more hearings on a day-to-day basis than most of the other judges. I also have a very high jury trial load. I'm doing 1 to 2 jury trials per month, and those are usually 2 or 3 day jury trials. Sometimes going up to 4 or 5 days, but the standard is 2 to 3 days. So I feel like I am pretty efficient. I'm able to handle my caseload. I think that's an important part of the process. Also treating everyone with respect. And I think that oftentimes litigants, they are more appreciative of that than, or I shouldn't say that. They care more about that sometimes than they care about the result. So if they feel like they're heard and they're respected, that goes a long way. I have very few problems in my courtroom with litigants, whether they're represented or unrepresented, because I always treat people with respect. I address everybody as sir or ma'am. When I'm sentencing somebody, regardless of what I think of them, I don't make comments on whether they're a good person or a bad person. I issue my sentence, and I always wish them good luck in the end. So I think that's a big part of the process. And also just a lot of common sense. I think especially, I'm a lawyer, but I think lawyers sometimes unlearn or they're not taught common sense. No offense to any of the lawyers, but
Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah,
you know, these are people's lives that we're dealing with, and regardless of the level, so I'm doing felonies now. This is a different level of types of cases that I would be handling as a city judge, but it's very important to the people who are involved in it. So I want to do something that works. So going back to that example I gave of the young lady who was pleading to a felony, my common sense kicked in, and I thought, this is not really how it should be handled. But ultimately, I went with what the attorneys and what the defendant wanted. But common sense is big, and I think sometimes lawyers forget that. They get caught up in the battle, and that doesn't always yield the best result. But I am a resident, as I said. I'm a new resident, but I have no plans of leaving, and I plan to make this my home, and I think this would be a great opportunity. I would love to serve the community in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Jensock.
Thank you.
very much. I think Deani is next.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you, thank you.
I want to ask Deani to come in. I shouldn't say Deani. I should
what you said.
call her by her correct name. Ms. Juarez. Thank you, Judge Juarez.
Good evening.
Just as a reminder, we're going to give you 3 minutes for candidate introduction, and our timer over here will give you the 1 minute, and then when the red one comes up, then I get to turn you off.
And I'll do my best to adhere.
All right. And then we have 3 minutes each for each question. There's 7 of us. And then you'll have 5-minute wrap-up. So if you don't get all of it in the first 3 minutes, you can throw it in the last 5 minutes.
Alrighty.
All right? But just as a reminder. And then we'll go in kind of order of the questions we have, and I get to go first. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I am Deani Juarez. Most of you already know me. I would like to highlight some of the things that the court has
Yanni,
accomplished.
can you get a little closer to
Speak up a little, just
your speaker there? It's
Is it this microphone?
picking
Yeah,
up.
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to highlight some of the things that the court and I as well have accomplished over the past, where we had about 8 months since I was appointed for the remainder of the current term. I'm still involved in some pilot projects with our new court case management system, AJAX. I'm on the forms pilot where we are working on developing forms for our system, testing those forms, updating them, seeing how they work with the system. I also started a couple months back a bandwidth project. I think the state's trying to keep it down on the down low, but we have some internet speed issues in the court, so the court is working with us to give us larger bandwidth. Most of the courts, they charge to get more bandwidth. They're not charging us. I also secured a court security grant for $24,500 to replace our court security server and cameras. I'm excited. The vendor showed up today. They started replacing those cameras, and that's a project that has been much needed. I've been selected to be on the AJAX steering committee. Ajax, obviously, that's our new case management system. It's something that the Arizona Supreme Court owns. They have developers that are currently working and working to further develop that. So by being on the steering committee, I can give the state input to help make that system what it's going to be in the future. It's a good system. It has a lot of work and a lot of progress that we need to work on to make it a great system, but I am a part of that committee. I was recently appointed to the CARA Board, Community Action Human Resource Agency, which is a local organization that helps provide support to low-income families. And in the past couple of weeks, I graduated from the Hispanic Leadership Institute.
Thank you. All right, the first question I have, what is your definition of the People's Court?
The Casa Grande City Court is definitely a people's court. We want to have a court environment where our community members feel safe going, or they feel comfortable going. A lot of times our patrons, they're in court for the first time, they're nervous. What can a judge do to make that person feel relaxed, feel comfortable? Explain to either court staff, or if they're appearing before the judge, what issues or limitations that they may have that would prevent them from being successful in their court case. Also, a people's court to me is a court that has understanding, that listens to the patrons, make sure that they understand, make sure that the patrons understand how the processes work, make sure that they understand what their rights are, make sure that their rights aren't being violated, and really just be caring to make sure that people's rights are not being violated, and it's a place where they can come and seek help if that's what they need.
Thank you. Mr. Herman?
Please describe your experience, education, and training as it relates to management, supervision, and budgeting, and provide an example of how it would apply to the Casa Grande Municipal Court.
Mr. Herman, that is a loaded question, and you expect me to answer it in 3 minutes, but I will. I have a bachelor's in criminal justice administration. I also have a master's in business administration and public administration. After I completed those degrees, I went on to complete the highest level of education that is provided to court employees in the United States, which is the National Center for State Courts Fellows Program. I believe that my education, training, and background are very relevant to the Casa Grande City Court because it is training geared and focused towards the courts, budgeting, administration. This position that you're hiring for today, it's more than just a judge, it's a department head, somebody to lead the judicial branch for the city of Casa Grande, and I believe that my education and training has equipped me for that.
Justice Juarez, give us an example of a situation which I think this might fit some of your experience, in which you managed and were able to create a high morale, high productivity work group, and what were the keys to the success?
I think a great example of that, Mr. Powell, would be migrating to our new case management system. I just had a discussion with somebody out in the hall that it's been 2 years since we went to our new case management system, and it doesn't seem like it's been that long. However, we had to take measures to prepare for that migration to the new case management system. It was a lot of work. It wasn't something that we woke up one day and said, we need to do X, Y, and Z because we're going to a new case management system tomorrow. It was planning. We planned several years in advance, made sure that I went to meetings to understand what the requirements were for the data in our previous case management system to make sure that we had a successful migration to our new case management system. So it was a lot of planning and working with my staff to make sure that when we went to that new case management system, that we had data that would convert, we had data in a format where we could extract that data and continue move on, and it wouldn't interrupt court operations. But at the same time, none of us knew how to use the new case management system, and we went through the training. So there were several steps that we took, whether it was planning ahead. One example would be that the way that we managed our compliance with court orders, we knew that when we went to our new case management system, we had no way of tracking that the way we were recording it in our previous case management system. Therefore, we had to come up with a way that we made sure that when we went to that new case management system, we knew all of our cases that needed to be tracked, and we had that information. And what we ended up doing is we created a separate database, kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, to track that information. So that way, when we went to our new case management system, we had a method and a way of tracking that information to make sure none of our cases slipped through the cracks. And once we converted to that new case management system, obviously there was a little bit of frustration because we were all learning, but here we are 2 years later and we're all surviving.
Judge, what skill sets would you bring to enhance the court operations?
Councilwoman Courtson, I think I have a lot of skill sets that I have developed over the years that are an asset to the court. I've learned our case management system. If I'm in the courtroom and someone comes in and they're telling me something about a case and it doesn't sound quite right or they're not quite sure, I can log into our case management system, look it up, figure out what they're talking about, and provide them with that information. Other skill sets, knowledge of the Arizona revised statutes, Casa Grande City Code. I feel that there are a lot of different skill sets that a person needs to have to be in this position. Other skill sets would be my background with my business degrees, because we're essentially running an organization, budgeting, administration, policy writing. I've written several grants over the years. I already have some ideas to write some grants for next year. I'm a little bit excited about that, but there are an array of skill sets that I feel that I possess that would be an asset to the city of Casa Grande.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Fitzgibbons.
Judge, what should be the relationship between the municipal mayor and the city council, and how would you deal with any potential conflicts between the three branches of government?
Councilwoman Fitzgibbons, that's a wonderful question, and I know that that's something that a lot of the municipalities struggle with here in our state, and I'm glad that I've been fortunate enough that I've really never had to deal with a lot of issues, but I've heard some other employees of other courts where council members or other city employees have tried to interfere with court operations. And when I say interfere, I'm talking about maybe an example would be maybe a relative gets a citation and somebody from another department is going to the court pretty much asking for what I'd call a favor to do something with that citation. And luckily, I've been in a position with the city of Casa Grande where we've got a pretty good relationship where the different branches, whether it is city management or council members, have been really good and respectful, and I've never really had to deal with that. If something did occur where something like that did happen, obviously I would need to make sure that I remove myself from that case if it did involve a case, but I'd probably hand it over to my court administrator, so my court administrator could either go talk to that person or governing body and explain to them that we have the separation of powers and why it is so important to make sure that we respect that.
Could you describe a situation where you had to support a legal position that conflicted with your personal beliefs and how you handled that?
One of the things that I have tried really hard over the years is to make sure that I keep my personal beliefs separate from what the law states. If I had to pick a legal decision that I struggle with, something that I really struggle with, especially over the past year, is the bail reform that's been occurring in the state of Arizona. After the Ferguson report that came out from Ferguson, Missouri, the state of Arizona put together a commission to review that report and start judicial reform here in Arizona. And one of the big pushes lately is bail reform. essentially what the concept is that a person ends up in jail because they are poor. A person has a bond. If they're poor, they can't afford to pay their bond, and therefore they're stuck in jail because they are poor. In the past, we've had bonds for cases, $500. A person can't come up with $500, even though a lot of us would think $500 isn't a lot of money, but to some people, $500 is a lot of money and it is a burden. The reform is talking about what is the lowest amount possible for this person to pay to secure their appearance at a future court date. And a lot of times the answer to that is maybe $50, $100. But even with that, when they show up to court on transport day, there's a lot of people that are in custody on $50 bonds. They can't even come up with $50 to secure their appearance. But my struggle is on the flip side of that. A lot of times in these cases, there's a victim involved, and that victim's going to receive a notification saying, you're the victim in this case. This person saw a judge, that this is their next court date. And by the way, they're being held in custody on a $50 bond. My struggle is, if I put my shoes or fill the shoes of the victim, am I thinking that the court is really serious about my case? Really, they're holding this person on a $50 bond. Is that a joke? So that is really something that I struggle with, trying to see both sides of the coin when dealing with defendants and trying to keep in mind and being respectful and making sure we don't violate the rights of either the defendant or the victim, and being fair.
Thank you.
Ms. Juarez, can you tell the panel what judicial ethics mean to you?
Judicial ethics is something I hold very high priority to. As a judicial officer, we need to make sure that we are holding ourselves to a higher standard. It doesn't matter if we are at work, if we're out in the community, we need to make sure that what we are doing or our behaviors, we're acting in the utmost ethical manner. We do have a code of conduct for court and judicial employees. There's a judicial commission where if you act in an unethical manner, we can file a complaint with that commission and they will review and make decisions. And I think that it's important that we have these boards to make sure that we are being held to that higher ethical standard. Because if I'm doing things that I'm not supposed to be doing, and I have somebody standing in front of me for doing the same thing that I do, what right do I have to judge this person when I'm doing the same thing that they're doing, but it's okay for me to do it, but it's not okay for them to do it? So we need to make sure that as judicial officers that we do keep in mind that integrity and that we hold ourselves to that higher ethical standard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Juarez. Now, you have 5 minutes to tell us everything that we don't know about you.
Well, I could probably do that in 5 seconds, but I'll do my best. Mayor and members of the council, as you know, I've been in this position for approximately 8 months, and I really enjoy working for the city of Casa Grande, especially with the Casa Grande City Court. I have a passion for what I do. I really enjoy what I'm doing and what I can do to help the community. A lot of people might question, you're a court, what can you do to help the community? But there is a lot that we can do. We can implement programs, we can be understanding and help these people be successful and let them know if you're off track on your case, come in and talk to us so we can help you get back on track. As a result of the way I feel about the courts, I try to stay involved at the state, county, and local level. I sit on the CLIA board, which is the Court Leadership Institute of Arizona. That is a committee that is comprised of judicial employees as well as members of the public, and we develop educational curriculum to help develop our future court leaders. I try to stay involved at the county level and be involved in different committees as well. And at the local level, I've also implemented a regional training program where I offer training to employees of local courts. We don't have 100 people showing up, but do you know what? We survey our courts and ask them what kind of training that we need locally, and I work on bringing in people, or if I need to develop the training myself, I'll develop the training and teach it. We had a regional training program this past month. There was some expressed needs for criminal history reporting. I contacted the Department of Public Safety, and I had a lady from Department of Public Safety come down and teach that class. I also coordinated with the Arizona Supreme Court. They have several instructors that teach some very good classes. I had one of their instructors come down and teach an ethics class. And then I have several classes that I developed that are geared towards our new case management system, AJAX, and I also teach cybersecurity, and that is a program that I intend to keep going for many years to come. But overall, I really enjoy what I do and serving the community and the citizens of Casa Grande, and I would really appreciate being reappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time out tonight.
Thank you.
Judge Lasoda.
Mr. Mayor, I have some handouts, visual aids that are relevant to some of the things I'll be discussing. Can I pass those out now? Or?
Please. While you're doing that, I'm just going to kind of recap the process and the timing. So we're going to give you 3 minutes to do an introduction. Then you'll have 3 minutes to answer each question, and each council member has one question for you. And then at the end, we'll give you 5 minutes to do a wrap-up. And then our timer over here, which you can't really see because if you're looking at us, you don't see him, but he gives you a 1 minute wave with a 1 minute sheet. And then when the red comes up, then I'll cut you off. Okay? So why don't you start, Judge, with your introduction, and you have 3 minutes to introduce yourself. And while you're doing that, would you let us know whether you plan to, somewhere in your introduction, whether you plan to move to Casa Grande or what your plans are in that regard? I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. That's actually the first part of my opening they already had prepared, so
there you go.
Real shortly here. Good evening. My name is A. Douglas Lasoda. I'm the presiding magistrate for the City of Cotton Municipal Court, where I've been presiding there for 10 years. I'm on my fifth 2-year term at the current time, and I'm able to leave my contract anytime I need to, as long as I give notice to the City of Cottonwood City Council. So the proposed starting date of getting sworn in on January 7th works out perfectly for me, and I could be here earlier if it was the council's pleasure as well, if there was a need to have me at an earlier point in time. First of all, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here to discuss with you the reasons why I feel that I'm the best person for this position and best for the long-term interests of the city of Casa Grande and its residents. I want to move here because I want to have a stake in the outcome. I want to have the decisions I make affect me and my family as well as the rest of you, so that the decisions I make I know are being made for the right reasons. I've already lined up temporary housing. I'll be residing in full-time in Casa Grande the week of January 2nd at the latest. I've lived in Cottonwood for the past 9.5 years. My son lives up there with me, attends school. He's in the 7th grade. I've already started looking for schools down here, and I've already found one that I've found that I think will be a good school for him down here that I'd like to have him attend. He's in the middle of his 7th grade year, and I wanted to be able to have him at one location where he can stay and finish all of his high school years. I don't want him switching around back and forth or cutting out in the middle of a term, and then when he got to go leave and he doesn't have any friends, but everybody else does. Casa Grande is where I want to reside, to be a member of the community, and to raise my son. I want him to be able to attend middle school and high school here. During the interview, I hope to give you a good picture of my background as a person and as a judge. I'd like to stress certain themes throughout the course of this, and the things I'd like to stress are service, experience, and partnership. In the highlighting experience, I have 40 years of experience, combined legal and judicial experience, 17 years of experience as a judge, 10 years experience running a busy court as a chief judge, presiding judge, doing the exact duties that I'd have to do here. I've served in 6 different court systems: Mason Municipal Court, Scottsdale City Court, Maricopa County Justice of the Peace Courts, Chandler Municipal Court for 7 years, 10 years in Cottonwood, and also for the past 9 years, I'm also appointed as a juvenile hearing officer for Yavapai County that are concurrent with my duties in Cottonwood as well. A lot of the programs that we have are similar to the ones you have. We copied your home detention program. You did a great job of doing that, so we went along and did that. Also, when you guys were the leaders on doing the bath salt statute, our city took that up too, and before my city even passed that, I made it a term of release for all defendants not to possess bath salts or any illegal substance. So I was trying to stay on top of that problem as well. And I haven't seen a bath salts case in 8 years in my court. So I think a lot of what you did on starting other cities to see what that statute's needed has brought down a lot of crime rates that are related to that.
Thank you. That's your time limit on that. So, but just keep the other stuff. We have another 5 minutes at the end.
Thank you.
So my first question, we're going to go in order of our questions here. And since I'm the first on the list, I'll go first. What is your definition of the People's Court?
People's Court is, first of all, it's the residents that pay the taxpayer dollars that pay for the court. They pay for the judge, they pay for all the staff members. The court's there to serve the people. It's there to serve the community in which it serves. People walking in the court, most of them, it's their only experience they have with the court system. Sometimes they'll have a divorce in Superior Court, things of that nature. But at some point in time, most people get a civil traffic ticket. Sometimes they end up being a witness. Sometimes they'll end up being charged with an offense. And those type of people, when they walk into the court, they don't want a system where it feels like it's just some star chamber kind of thing, where the judge thinks he's high and mighty, and the staffers are just trying to process cases and that type of thing. I think the ultimate goal of being a people's court is to service the community and make sure the community is better for the job of justice that you do within the city. So what I do is I make sure that we're able to communicate with people, get along with them, make sure that they understand what's expected of them, give them some opportunities to succeed, to not reoffend, and they want to have someone that talks to them, that acts like they care about them as well. And I do that with the people I see. I discuss with them other ways that they may be able to commit a DUI, to make sure they're warned about that, to warn that marijuana can be an issue, or even prescription medications can be a DUI drug as well. I tell them that. Kids that come in that are under the age of 18 that have a minor in consumption, I'll talk to them about the fact that, you want to make sure you don't drive too, because if you drive, you're going to lose your license for a couple of years. So there's several different areas where I try to make sure people understand that I'm trying to watch out for them in the long run too, because I don't want to see them get in trouble because they don't understand the law, or they don't understand what may be going on. And People's Court, they want to come in and have someone that's just going to be fair to them, give them a chance. It's not going to be all preloaded for the state, that like it is in some courts throughout the state. I've been through some of those as an attorney defending people, and sometimes it's not the most fun to be in, because no matter what you do, no matter what your defense is, it's guilty, 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 and sometimes people are actually not guilty. Sometimes they're not guilty of civil traffic offenses. Sometimes they're actually not guilty of criminal offenses. The officers oftentimes are not there to see all the different potential elements of an offense, and it might be one person's word against another, neighbors against another, but people need to be able to come and be able to talk to a judge, and then afterwards, after their sentence, they'll have issues afterwards. And I always tell people when they get sentenced, if you have any problems making your payment on time, if you have any problems getting your community service or any other thing that the court has ordered getting done, come here and talk to us. I tell them, we'll always talk to you, we'll always try to work it out. So sometimes they're able to.
Thank you. Mr. Herman?
Judge, please describe your experience, education, and training as it relates to operational management, supervision, and budgeting. Provide an example of how it would apply in the Casa Grande Municipal Court.
Can I hear the last part of that again?
Just, provide an example of how it would apply in the Casa Grande Municipal Court.
I guess I need to ask what was right before that,
Oh.
what the it was.
Yeah, operational management, supervision, and budgeting. Did we say that? Oh,
Yes, I've got it.
okay.
So all the different pro tem positions I've had, I was supervising clerks and court bailiffs during the course of those positions, but that's usually like one at a time. Starting in 1985, I started my own law practice, and I had several attorneys and up to 9 or 10 staff members at that point in time. So I had experience with operating my own law firm, being responsible for budgeting, management, hiring, firing, all the different personnel decisions that are the same as a judge would be doing within this court. You know, for the past 10 years, I've done all of the management duties that go along with the presiding judge position. You know, hiring, firing, setting policies, making sure there's compliance with AOC, Administrative Office of the Court rules, and selection of personnel, firing, working with the court administrator, doing budgets, setting budgets. Also for budgetary experience before, I worked for a company called American Medicor that's in San Antonio. It was a company that owned 10 or 12 hospitals. So when I was 18, still going to college, I was already helping do budgets for much more extensive than any of these courts do, and I was helping follow through with budgets after that as well. I've also attended National Center for State Courts Certified Court Manager Program and Certified Court Executive Program. I'm nationally certified as a court manager and as a court executive. I also attended and am the only judge in Arizona to complete all of the following programs: the Arizona Court Supervisor, the Arizona Court Manager, and the Arizona Court Executive programs. And those are very helpful towards running a successful court.
Great.
Justice Lasota, give us an example of a situation in which you managed or led a team and were able to create high productivity in the work group, and give us what were the keys to your success doing that.
I think one good example would be, you know, early on, I started a court coordinating committee, you know, to try to make sure that more than just the court's involved in making decisions that affect people and people's lives and makes it more of a people's court, as you suggested earlier. Members of that team involve myself, having a court administrator, the prosecutor, court-appointed attorney, a victim witness advocate, and we had a commander from the police department. So during the course of those sessions, we discuss different issues going on with the court, what things can be done to better the court, security issues, all kinds of issues that may come up within the court. Plus I educate them periodically as to the changes in the law that come up from cases that I read that affect things that are going to be going on with the court. Some of the things that have arisen out of the court coordinating committee is the fact that I established a early disposition court, which has been very successful, and it's really helped get cases managed in a much more timely manner, helps get victims their restitution quicker, helps keep the fact that we're shorthanded staff members because of the budget issues, make sure that we're able to handle the cases as we need to. So early disposition court before, you know, you get your citation or have a court date on it, and then you go that and the judge would go through initial things with you, verifying your name, address, and phone number, that type of thing, and going through a little bit about your rights with you, and then setting it off for a pretrial conference. In the meantime, people have to wait for another 30 days. What's going to happen to me? People get stressed. So what I learned from a couple of other courts, one of which was out of state, about how successful those programs can be, you know, we have it set up to where prosecutors at that initial appearance. So sometimes we're getting cases resolved in as little as 12, 14 days, where people come and they can either have a deferred prosecution program, if that's what the prosecutor offers, or go forward with a plea agreement, or if we need to appoint an attorney on a DUI case, we're able to get the attorney appointed at that point in time. But we probably resolve over 60 to 70% of our cases at that first court date, which as I indicated, gets the victims their money quicker, gets cases handled more quickly, has the staff have to handle those cases less frequently, and it's been a very successful program. So setting together that court coordinating committee, I think, was very helpful. And the other thing I asked with the court coordinating committee is I tell them, I want constructive criticism. I don't claim to be perfect. I've never been perfect a day in my life. If I'm making a mistake, if I need to do something different, I want you to tell me. And I've listened to the advice that they've given me on things, and some of the different changes that we've made at times have been due to listening to that input from all these different individuals. You know, the victim witness advocate is from a domestic violence shelter. And
I've taken that same tact with my wife. Thank you very much,
okay.
Justice.
I didn't realize that I'd seen the stop sign somewhere. Sorry.
Judge, what skill sets would you bring to enhance the court operations in Casa Grande?
I bring a wealth of education, experience. You know, as I indicated, there's all the different court jobs that I've worked at as a judge pro tem. You know, 40 years experience combined between, you know, being an attorney and being a judge, 17 years of which is judicial experience. And working for 6 different court systems, you work for different presiding judges. Each of them had things that I was able to learn from them and bring into my current position. You know, the judge in Mesa, Judge Chafoy, has been there for a long time. Judge Traynor in Chandler. There's excellent judges in Scottsdale. You know, with the Justice of Peace courts, I learned from different Justice of Peace pieces throughout the county, and you learn many things from those type of people. I also bring with me all the court manager, court supervisor training that I indicated. I also, you know, bring with me a lot of seasoning in life affairs as well. I've been through a lot of different things over the years, just as any individual, and I think, you know, the older you are, the more you learn sometimes, and the more experience you have handling situations that you might not see when you're a little bit younger. I bring a wealth of variety of experience. I've been a prosecutor. I've been a court-appointed attorney in different city courts. I handle half of all the courtroom defense in Mesa and Chandler for city court-appointed cases before. I've worked as a public defender for Maricopa County. I've worked as an attorney handling all kinds of cases, including divorces and city court cases and felonies, all the different types of things that you might see within this court is in the way of misdemeanor cases, extensive amount for order protection. I also bring the fact that I've been a servant of the community in many ways. I did a lot of pro bono work when I was an attorney. I represented a lot of domestic violence victims. Was it a stop or is that a 1 minute?
1 minute.
I represented a lot of victims of domestic violence on a pro bono basis. I represented a lot of people who were poor and some veterans and people who were disabled, you know, trying to give back to the community in those regards too. And I've also given a lot of community service in other areas. I'm president of the Arizona Buckskin Horse Association. I've rendered over 10 years experience as a director of rules for the International Buckskin Horse Association. I've been involved in 4-H shows. I just judged their state championship 4-H show. I've worked with 4-H kids over the years, teaching them how to ride horses and how to better themselves in the horse show arena. I worked as a soccer coach when I was younger, so I have experience dealing with people of all ages. I was in juvenile court for over 20 years, working as a juvenile court attorney and guardian ad litem, so I'm used to dealing with younger people. I have my own 13-year-old. Thank you. So much information to give in so little time.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Oh, yeah. What should be the relationship between the municipal court, the mayor, and the city council? And how would you deal with any potential conflicts between the 3 branches of government?
Well, they should be partners. And, you know, I work hand in hand with you guys on budget processes. When I have new programs, you know, suggesting what programs that I think need to be enacted, such as when we brought up the home detention program, a deferred prosecution program, other things of that nature, because obviously a lot of things have expense to it, and some things are within your purview as the legislative branch to make laws, and it's up to me to suggest them, not to write the laws. But I've had good luck with the city of Cottonwood on every law that I've suggested they've passed, and as indicated, some of those ordinances were direct copies of what you have down here too. So I'm used to dealing with those, and you know, it's one of those things where if the design already looks good, why change it? So you know, you guys developed some good statutes down here, so I follow those as well. Can I hear a repeat of the question, please? I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
Oh, just, and if there was any conflicts between, how would you deal with any conflicts?
All right, if one of you get charged with a civil traffic matter, somebody else is going to have to hear the case, because it's a direct conflict of interest for me to have to make a decision as to whether or not you're guilty or not responsible or not on civil traffic cases. I think that's a direct conflict that would violate the Arizona Code of Judicial Conduct. The other thing too is it would not only would violate the code, but it would also create the appearance of impropriety. Because if one of you come before me and I happen to find you not responsible, everybody in the city, at least the portion that always thinks that something must be going wrong and it must be rigged, is going to think it was a rigged decision. They pay a salary. It was a done deal, and it doesn't matter if an officer sat there seeing him running a stop sign or not. They were just going to get off the hook, type of thing. So I would not touch any of your cases with a 10-foot pole. And I don't think that I would even keep it within the court itself, because you authorize salaries for those individuals as well. Those cases, what we've done, if we've had a conflict, is we've up there, the Justice of Peace Court Street is right across the street, but we get the prosecutor to deal with the prosecutor for the county and get permission to be able to transfer the case across the street. Then there's no appearance of impropriety. But as far as dealing with you individually, obviously to keep that separation of powers, we're not supposed to become, like good friends with you out on a social night and Friday nights and that type of thing. So nothing personal if that doesn't happen, because that's something I think we need to keep a little bit of separation from, just again for that appearance of impropriety and how people are going to view that. But I can be your friends here in these chambers that are before God and everybody as to what type of experiences that I think we need to share with you. Things that we need as far as new programs. Sometimes if we have to ask for more money, we're going to be coming and talking to you and trying to deal as best we can with that issue.
Thank you.
Good. Judge Lasota, could you describe a situation where you had to support a legal position that conflicted with your own personal beliefs, and how did you handle that?
I'm searching my mind for an instance of when that's happened, and I don't think that's happened. If that situation were to arise, the way I would look at it is I'm required to follow the law. I'm required to follow, if you guys have enacted a city ordinance and that's what they're charged with, I'm duty sworn, and I have my ethical duties to follow the law, regardless of what my personal preferences are. And I kind of use an expression on most cases that it is what it is, and if it's something that's not something that I agree with, but that's something that's required of me to do, whether it's a duty that I have to do under the administrative office of the courts that requires me to do something, whether or not it's a case decision that I have to make to find somebody guilty or not guilty, depending on the circumstances that I disagree with, and I really think it should go the other way, but unfortunately the law is there. I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to be fair and just. Sometimes things like that, it depends on what it is, can come into account at the sentencing range, but they can't come into account as whether or not somebody is guilty or not to start with. And I'm not going to be deviating. And I've never found a law unconstitutional. I don't think city court judges' jobs are to find state statutes or city ordinances unconstitutional. That's up to higher levels, and if the county attorney wants to deal with that, or the attorney general wants to come out with an opinion, or someone wants to go through the appeals and some attorney wants to take it up to the Court of Appeals and try to find some change, they can do that, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to strike down your ordinances. I'm going to be enforcing whatever ordinances that you guys create, unless there's some strong reason not to, like it's blatantly unconstitutional on its face, and I haven't seen one of those yet.
Thank you.
Sir, can you tell the panel what judicial ethics mean to you?
Judicial ethics are one of the most important factors that there are in being a judge. If you don't have ethics, then you're not a good judge. You have to be able to have the ethics to make sure that not only you're complying with the Code of Judicial Conduct, complying with any state statutes, but also being very careful about things such as creating the appearance of impropriety, because people need to know that their system is a system that they can trust to do justice. And if the people see judges being unethical, they're going to think that it's not it's not going to be a good result when they go before that court. And the other thing too is the more ethical you show yourself to be, and if you're 100% ethical with no issues and no shortcomings on that front, everybody in the system is going to respect you more, all the way down to the defendants, the attorneys, staff members. And my finding has been over the years that when I earn the respect of defendants, I'm going to be more likely to have them comply with their orders for counseling, making sure they make their payments on time, doing the other orders that I require of them. And you know, I think also ethically you need to make sure you put a good image out there for your other staff members too. For example, in our court we have two staff members that are also associate magistrates as well. I think you call them deputy judges here. And we have 2 that are civil traffic hearing officers too. So some of it's a big lead by example too, and make sure that they comply with the ethics rules. And I think when they see that you're acting ethically and they see that that's what's required and they see that's the system of justice that we're going to be operating under, they're going to be doing the same thing too. And I've never had any problems with any of my staff members, you know, on whether or not they're going to act ethically or not, because it's required of them and I require it of myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our questions. So I'll give you another 5 minutes to tell us what you needed to still tell us after the first 3 minutes, and or any wrap up that you want to.
Did I have 5 minutes now? Is that what I have?
You have 5 minutes, yes, sir. Starting now.
I think some of the other things I was going to go into in the opening I've kind of covered throughout some of the answers here. But I want you to know that I'm fully committed to moving to Casa Grande, being part of the community, immersing myself in the job, giving you the very best that I have to give you. I always work over 40 hours a week. 40 hours a week, I don't know when I've ever worked 40 hours a week. And, you know, from when I was a kid shoveling stalls, you know, everything that I do in life, nothing takes 40 hours. And, you know, with the judicial positions I have, I'm always studying other cases come up. I read every single Arizona Court of Appeals or Supreme Court decision, every U.S. Supreme Court decision, every Ninth Circuit Court of decision that affects the type of cases that I handle. And that way I'm able to share those with others. I work nights and weekends doing that type of thing. I know I get my wife a little ticked off sometimes when she sees me studying so much, but I think it's important to make sure that you're prepared for every case that comes before you to make sure you do a proper job in handling them. I understand and respect cultural and diversity differences, and I'll respect those. Everyone who comes into my court gets treated the same. I don't care what their race, color, creed, nationality, religious belief, any other factor that you can look at makes any difference whatsoever. Everybody's entitled to that same system of justice in their people's court. I'm fair and impartial to everybody that appears before me. I think my history counts with my life experience, the 40 years of legal experience, 17 plus years of judicial experience, the service that I've rendered to the community on many different fronts, the service that I've rendered to city, county, and federal court systems. By the way, I was also a court-appointed attorney in federal court as well as county courts and city courts. I have the experience in six systems. I have experience working with kids under the age of 18, especially some that you'll see coming before the court as well too. I'm a juvenile hearing officer as well, so I know how to deal with those. I know how to deal with children from having a 13-year-old and being a coach. I have a blend of prosecution and defense experience. I'm not one side or the other. I'm not pro-prosecution. I'm not pro-defense. It is whatever it is. One day you'll walk in there and you might have 3 not guilties. One day it's going to be 3 guilties. One day it's going to be a blend of things. It doesn't matter to me what the end result is. What matters to me is that I make the right decision under the facts and law that were presented to me. And that's what I'll promise you that I'll do in every single case that I have. I'll give you full commitment to the community and the court. I want to serve the community and accentuate the lives of families and children. I think I have excellent communication skills. When people leave the court, they know that they've been listened to, that their point has been heard, and that they had a judge that cared about making the right decision in their case. A lot of times I won't be finding for them, but they'll at least know that they got their shot and that the judge was fair and the judge that cared about doing the right result. I'm a career judge, not an attorney. I gave up being an attorney like 17 years ago. It's kind of like that conversion thing. You know, one day you're a heathen, the next day you're a Christian. Well, I kind of moved from being an attorney to being a judge, and I enjoy being a judge. I don't like some of what you have to go through being an attorney. but I feel my skill set is better designed towards being a judge, and that's what I enjoy, and that's what I get the most life satisfaction as. I'm never going to be going back to being an attorney. I want to stay a judge, and I want to stay as your judge until I retire. Another thing too is I get the big picture. It's not just about case processing. Big things that need to be considered that most courts don't is that there's also significant concerns about deterrence and rehabilitation that the court needs to consider as well. So just processing a case and say, here's your $500 fine, go away, to somebody who's got mental health problems that keeps coming back in the revolving door, you're not doing any good just processing the case. I established a homeless and mental health court, again with the assistance of that court coordinating committee, at no cost to the city. And I've worked with the prosecutor and defense attorney, and we've come up with different programs where we send people into these, how much time do I have left? I send people into, we've gotten people off the streets that were homeless, and we send many people into, it's called Spectrum up there, which is a mental health treatment program. One final thing is just today I was reading that the word of the year from the Merriam-Webster dictionary is justice, and I asked you to allow me to work with you to be able to make sure that that word is something that's important for the coming terms that I serve within this court. I'm always well prepared, and I'll be ready to start from day one. I'll be here even before I get sworn in to start meeting with staff members and getting the lay of the land and trying to talk to people. I also wish to hear from some of you to see what you think some of the strengths and weaknesses of the court are. I want to find that out from talking to staff members, attorneys, people that appear before the court, department heads, the finance director, the city manager, and you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good luck with your decision.
Give us 2 minutes. We need to take a break.
Too much coffee.
Someone needs to take a break.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh.
I don't need to adjourn, do I?
Hello.
It's Redkey?
Radke, yes.
Okay.
Radke.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to be here tonight. And just to kind of reiterate, we're going to give you 3 minutes to give us a little bit about you. And then each of us have one question. So you'll get 3 minutes to answer each question. And then you'll have a 5-minute wrap-up at the end. So if there's stuff you missed at the first 3 minutes or anything else you want to add, before we're done. And again, thank you for being here. And we're waiting for one more council member. I thought he'd be here by the time I got through with my explanation. We do have an official timer, and that's what and then you'll get a red stop for the final, after the 1 minute, okay?
Okay.
And I know sometimes it's hard to see, especially if you're looking up here,
Yeah, I
so,
know.
so if we hit the red, I'll give you the, okay?
Okay.
That's true. We'll have to find him. He went over 3 minutes.
Oh,
Okay, so why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself? You have three minutes.
Well, I'm Erica Radke. I am currently a Vice Chief Administrative Law Judge for the Industrial Commission. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time working as a Social Security disability attorney in private practice. I had my own law firm. What I did was I worked part-time because I had my 2 young daughters at home. So I balanced my practice as well as raising them until they were old enough to get into high school. And then I decided to do what I really wanted to do, which was become a judge. Prior to that, I also have large law firm experience, and I also represented the Social Security Administration as Assistant Regional Counsel. And I also have I worked at a mid-sized firm in Indiana called Gonzalez, Saggio, and Harlan, where I did motor vehicle accident cases, labor and employment law, and also represented some clients in municipal court. So all in all, my background is primarily litigation-oriented. I've represented defendants, corporate defendants, large and small, and also I've represented applicants as well. And on the bench now, it's workers' compensation law, so it's primarily the public. The litigants are people that are claiming to be injured, the insurance company, and also the employer. And in addition to sitting on the bench as Vice Chief Administrative Law Judge, I also manage a staff of 14. So I've been able to balance working as a judge as well as doing the hands-on management of a large team. And I'm actually surprised. I enjoy managing people. I didn't think I was, but I like it a lot.
Good for you. And one other thing that I didn't ask you, and since you have some time, I was going to also include, and I've asked the others too, to let us know if you have plans to move to Casa Grande.
I am considering it, but I live in the foothills of Ahwatukee, so I'm pretty close, and I thought there may have been some rule as far as if you're less than 30 miles out or so.
There is.
It was a very easy drive here. Wasn't troublesome at all.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go in order, and then you'll have 3 minutes to answer each of our questions, okay? So I'm going to go first. What is your definition of the People's Court?
To me, the People's Court means this is a court that is for the citizens, for the individuals that come here with an issue. Part of working for Social Security, since disability doesn't discriminate, it can hit anybody. So my clients were from all walks of life, and I got a chance to get a bird's eye view of what was important to them when they were going to court. And what I found is, as a citizen, someone going to the People's Court, you want to be treated fairly, you want a judge that's knowledgeable, you want someone that's impartial, you want the staff to treat you with respect, and you also want the judicial system to be efficient. And now that I am a presiding judge, I make sure those are the values that I bring when I'm handling cases. I make sure I'm fair, and I make sure that I try to get my awards out as quickly as possible. And I also instruct our staff to make sure that they're treating everyone that calls in respectfully and that they're professional.
Thank you.
Please describe your experience, education, and training as it relates to management, supervision, and budgeting. And please provide an example of how it would apply in the Casa Grande Municipal Court. And I can repeat that if you want, because it's a lot.
Could you repeat it one more time,
Yep.
please?
Please describe your experience, education, and training as it relates to operational management, supervision, and budgeting. Please provide an example of how it would apply in the Casa Grande Municipal Court.
As far as education and training, I have had a lot of training with the Arizona management system, which is basically Arizona's version of lean management. And it's where you take processes, work processes, and using the line employees, try to make the systems more efficient and more effective. So as far as operational management, I've had a lot of experience with that. In working for the Industrial Commission, we've had some pretty large initiatives come through. One of them was call it the JABS pilot project, where the Industrial Commission still uses court reporters. And we had some trouble with the court reporters. They are independent contractors, they're not employees. Had some trouble with them, they weren't showing up for hearings. So I had told the chief judge that when I practiced for Social Security Disability, we never had court reporters, we always had digital recording. So what we did is we researched digital recording systems. I did a couple of field trips to Social Security to talk to my contacts there. We brought in some people to look at our system. We chose a vendor. And we ended up then drafting what's called an A3 for the commission to look at. And I was responsible for drafting it, just showing how this would be a cost savings move for the agency. And I turned it into the deputy director, who of course turned it into the deputy, who then turned it into the commissioners. And what I found was that we would have a savings of $325,000 a year if we were to move to digital recording systems. And they have. The commission agreed, and we'll be rolling out this process in July. So, and as far as supervision, I supervise a wide staff right now. I do everything from tweaking the position description to doing hiring to promoting individuals, also any kind of discipline that comes up, all the way through the occasional termination. And like I said, I'm surprised that I enjoy managing. When I applied for the promotion, I did it because I felt ready for a challenge. But people usually say, oh, managing is so terrible. I actually enjoy it. I like getting through to people. I like making them see, how we can do processes better, and I like encouraging them. And as far as budgeting, we have a sort of collaborative office with the chief judge, and he has the two vice chiefs, myself and another individual. So he does handle the budget, but I've gone to the budgeting classes with him because we just switched over to a new budget. And I also help him review the budget, and he wants our input. And then we prepare him then to present the budget to the deputy director. So that, in my budgeting experience, I figured since I've been able to prepare him, I would be able to do the budgeting myself.
Thank you. I hate doing that.
Unless
Justice Radke, give us an example of a situation you managed or led a team and were able to create a high morale and a very effective, positive work group, and what were the keys to the success by doing that?
We have, in the Industrial Commission, there's a hearing process that goes in stages. There's the initial hearing where the injured worker will testify, and then there are further hearings where the doctors or the vocational experts will testify. After the initial hearing, the judge will come back and instruct the secretary to set up the further hearings. The further hearings, there's a process where, usually because of timing, a further hearing might be 3 months after the initial hearing. But we found that some of the secretaries weren't even starting to set their furthers until 3 months after that. So, our customers weren't getting hearings for 6 months at least. So I decided we needed to just to have a further hearing process. It needed to be revamped. So I met with the two best people that set their further hearings. I asked them about their process, and I asked them to write it down for me. So we got the process on paper, we discussed it. I had a large meeting called a best practices meeting so everybody could have input into the further hearings process. And then I put it in a Visio. And I have the Visio here as well, I can show you. And I said, you know, we'll give it 2 weeks. It'll be sort of a period for you to get used to this process. Yeah, try it out for 2 weeks, give me your feedback. If it works, we're going to instill this further hearing process so we can cut down on the number of further hearings. And they've been cut down so much so that instead of it being 6 months out, the secretaries are setting their further hearings. We gave them a hard limit of 21 days. And for a year now, they've been setting them well under 21 days. And since it's all management, we have to document everything. So I have my statistics as well for what we've been doing. So it was hard to motivate them because they hadn't been doing it that way. It was a little bit of a change, but I just kept encouraging them. And I also, at monthly meetings, would tell people, oh, you know, this person set the most hearings, and they would cheer for their colleagues, and it got them excited about it.
Thank you.
Judge Radke, what skill sets would you bring to enhance the court operations here in Casa Grande?
My skill set would be, first, that I'm definitely used to dealing with people, you know, based on my practice. I've always been able to get along well with people. I'm pretty calm. I like being a judge. It's easy for me to make difficult decisions. And also, one skill set that I have is what I touched upon earlier, is that we've had a number of initiatives in our office, either changing to the digital recording system, also when we're moving to e-filing. A lot of big projects that have been rolled out where I, as a manager, have been primarily responsible for instructing my team and motivating them to continue with the process. And I think that that's a skill set that's important, is to be able to explain concepts and motivate people, and also hold them accountable when there's change.
Thank you.
What should be the relationship between the municipal court, the mayor, and the city council? And how would you deal with any potential conflict between the three branches of government?
Now, that's not a question I anticipated. Well, I mean, as the city court judge, if you're hearing cases, you know, municipal cases, and the mayor and the city council, if they have instructions or ideas on how to implement different processes to make the court run more efficiently, or if they notice that there are problems, I believe as the city judge, it's my responsibility to listen and to definitely have an open dialogue with how it would be able to accomplish these kinds of goals. If there were a conflict of interest, I would have to fall back on, you know, my ethical rules as an attorney. If there's a conflict of interest, I'd have to not, you know, recuse myself or say these are issues that I'm not going to be able to handle because of this conflict, and perhaps work out a way for someone else to handle that part of it for me.
Thank you.
Could you describe a situation where you had to support a legal position that conflicted with your own personal beliefs, and how did you handle that?
I had a case when I was working for when I was working for Social Security Disability. It was one of my first cases, and it was a man that had a severe back injury, and I talked to him, his referral, everything was going great. I thought it was an excellent case, And then I got some information that showed that he was lifting a large refrigerator at his home. He was doing things that were contradicting, you know, what we thought his back problem would limit him from doing. So my first, I wanted to get out of the case. I just did not want to deal with this anymore. But it was too late in the case to get out. The judge said, no, you've got to stay. So I talked to the client, and I got more information from him. It was true. He had lifted that refrigerator, but he said that his sons couldn't help him, that the city was coming down on him. He had to get it done or he's going to get in trouble. He was in bed 3 days after that. So when I heard that, I felt, oh, all right, I'm not going to lie. We're going to go in there. We're going to tell the truth. This is evidence I have to put forward, but we'll put it in context and we'll see what the judge is going to say. I didn't try to lie to him and make it seem like we're still going to win. I just said we're going to be honest. And the judge actually accepted, and we did win. So from that, I learned that, you know, you're the lawyer. You can keep your personal feelings out of these situations, particularly if it's still a legal position. If you're not doing something illegal, just because it's something you would not want to do, doesn't mean you can't represent your client and then represent them to the best of your ability.
Thank you.
Well said.
Judge Radke, can you tell the panel what judicial ethics mean to you?
Judicial, well, see, it's funny that you asked that, because one of my things that I do as a volunteer, when I read your bios, I said, you guys do a lot of volunteer work. I do what I can. The volunteer work that I do is for the Committee on Character and Fitness. And this is where people that have passed the bar, they've gone to law school and they've passed the bar, but there are issues in their background, sometimes issues that you may see in city court that have come up, and then we're not sure as a committee whether they have the requisite character and fitness to actually perform, you know, as an attorney. And what we've been doing is then you have a hearing, you investigate the case, you have a hearing, and then you decide whether or not you're going to let them in let them be members of the bar. Can you repeat your question? I think I lost it somewhere
Yes,
in there.
tell the panel what judicial ethics mean to you.
So ethics. So that's part of ethics, is what we do as far as making sure these people are able to be members of the bar. So for me, judicial ethics is an outgrowth then of just my ethics as an attorney or as a person. It means that if there's something that's breaking one of our rules or breaking the law or that is incorrect, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to be slick and slide it under the rug or turn my face. Those types of things, I always tell my kids, those things always come back to get you. So you might as well deal with it straightforward. So for me, when I'm sitting on the bench, that means not to, if I don't like an applicant, you know, he's a jerk, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm not going to give you the workers' comp. You know, ethically, I have to hear the case, hear the evidence, and weigh it fairly. And to me, that's what judicial ethics means.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Judge Radke. We're done with the questions. So the next piece is you have 5 minutes to wrap up your comments. Tell us any last things that you want us to know about, and then we'll let you go.
Well, I thank all of you for taking the time to do this and listening and setting this up. I'm really interested in this position. I've been a judge for a while. I like it a lot. One thing I didn't talk about was the fact that when I started as a workers' comp attorney, I'd never done workers' comp at all. It was entirely new to me. So I made a point of making sure to study the statutes, know the seminal cases, ask questions when I had to. And we also had a mentor whose job was to review everything you did. You could not issue anything without it being approved by your mentor. And it's usually a year-long process. And I'd worked so hard that she let me go in 9 months. So I learned quickly. I'm a hard worker. And then, as you see, since then, now I'm vice chief, and one of my responsibilities is training other new judges. So I do think that if I were able to have this position, I would be able to do well. And I really do thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking time out of your day, too. Larry, can we now adjourn then into executive session?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and my recommendation is that we actually depart to another location, either to the back conference room or up to
Why
the
don't we do that? We can eat at the same time. Ain't that bad.
Yeah, no problem.
We can eat at the same time.
Do you want to meet back here, or we can go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I need a motion to go into.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now adjourned into executive session. Any opposed? Okay, so we're out of executive session, and we're going to adjourn the earlier meeting, so that meeting is adjourned, and we'll reconvene, or not reconvene, we will convene tonight's council meeting.